Um, it is 8:25. We're gonna get started. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Dranoel Wilson. Um, I am a engineer, systems engineer at Boeing, out in Hazelwood. I'm originally from Texas. Been here for probably about to be 3 years. What else is there? um, I guess if you want to, that's kind of like a cap of things. If you want me to go through kind of like the whole education and everything, I can, but it's pretty much who I am.
Where'd you go to school?
So I went to, I was like I said, I was born in Dallas, raised in a small town called Terrell, Texas. Got my high school diploma in Terrell High School. Went to college at the University of Texas at Dallas and got my bachelor's in electrical engineering.
Okay. And where do you work? Or you work at Boeing. What do you do at Boeing?
So by title, I am a systems engineer. The general definition of that is working out different processes and improving the processes of various systems that we have throughout the company. In particular, I work with fighter jet simulators. So my job is to pretty much taking or setting up computers for different fighter jet simulator programs. So if y'all watched the video, or if y'all saw parts of that video, the part where the man was sitting in a crew station and looking at all those screens. My job is to make sure that all those that what that screen is showing is making sure that it's showing something. There's multiple parts to that team. I'm the one that just makes sure that there's something on the screen when they turn that computer on.
Yeah. That's a good thing. So basically you design video games for fighter pilots.
In layman's terms, yes. Just so they don't spend too much money on gas and actual training. A lot of programs have resorted to virtual training. So pretty much it's like they can, why spend the time in the air at risk when you can be playing video games and doing it all virtual.
You get to ever play the games yourself?
Yeah. I remember like the first time coming in there, and they kind of gave me the tour of everything, just kind of sitting there, fly around. I've never flown a plane before, so I'm not military, so it's all brand new to me. Only thing I can relate to it is just playing computer games.
So if I needed to fly a fighter jet, could I come to you, and based on your simulation, you could do it, or you're not that good yet?
To a certain extent. I don't know what I deal with as far as virtualization is definitely different from the actual fighter jet, because they have all the, like you see probably in movies and stuff, they flipping all the buttons, knobs, and different switches that they have. I don't have to deal with that so much.
Yeah.
I just deal with the screen that says fly, don't fly. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
and I want to tell everybody in the meeting, if you have a question you type it in the chat, and then we'll ask your questions. Okay. So that's why, like, just jump in, type it in the chat, and we'll answer your questions if you have any. But I'll keep asking questions if you all aren't asking questions. Okay. CJ, you've got a question? You have to unmute yourself if you're talking. I appreciate that you raised your hand.
No, I didn't mean to do that. That was my bad.
You didn't mean to? Okay, that's fine. We'll keep going. Next question is, I guess probably some students want to know, how much do engineers at Boeing get paid?
Oof. I mean, it ranges from, I say from probably 50, 60,000 up to like 80,000 and even more, depending on what your position is. Pre-tax. If y'all don't know about taxes, then then that's a whole different story.
Yeah, and so for context, your teachers, they, we start around 40,000, and we do not go up to 80,000. So engineers at Boeing are probably making more money than your teachers are making.
Yeah.
Is it related to science at all? Is what you're doing related to science, or how would it be related to science and math?
Science and math. Well, I would say math in a sense that there's a lot of calculations when it comes to these simulators, especially behind the scenes. That what you saw in the video, we actually have, that's been around for quite a bit of years, but I actually work alongside one of the co-creators of that machine, and he essentially, each of those screens are curved at a certain degree in order to kind of fit and make this like surrounding. So it's kind of like you're inside an egg. Nobody's been inside an egg, but just picture yourself being in an egg. And each one of those has a specific, they had to do a lot of math to get that specific angle for it to work out. So yeah, that involves some math to do. As far as science wise, I mean, mostly we're dealing with kind of most of our stuff is really technology. When we're dealing with databases, computer codes, hardware, putting hardware together, it has a lot to do mostly like math and technology. But science-wise,
Maybe your job's not as much about science, but if you're designing an airplane, if you're designing your airplanes, then it would be.
Yeah, it's a different story because then they deal with different materials, products that may be considered hazardous, or different metals that only reacts a certain way whenever they apply it to the other parts of the plane.
We have a question in the chat from.
Oh, what's the question?
We have a question in the chat from Charity. She wants to know, and anybody can be asking questions in the chat, yo. She wants to know, can kids fly the simulator or play the game on a field trip?
Pre-COVID, we actually had a few days where we would have friends or family come out and actually fly the simulators. We have it to the point where the particular one that my group works with, it's not really like all the, as I mentioned before, with all the buttons and switches and everything. You can pretty much kind of on and off, and you can fly around as much. It's fly as much simpler than you would if you were to give it to a pilot, to the ones that the pilots use. So yeah,
when
it's definitely
So when COVID ends, maybe you can, maybe they could ask you, or I could ask you about them coming and flying your simulator.
Right. We can definitely try to work something out, time permitting.
Yeah.
And COVID.
We've got another question. Does Boeing build planes that fly themselves, or plan to build planes that fly themselves?
I believe, let me check. Drones are an actual thing, not just like the little drones you put on the, buy out of Walmart or Best Buy, but like actual flightless drones that are the size of airplanes. Boeing does have a product or two of pilotless drones. So that is a thing.
Can you define drone for someone that doesn't know what a drone is?
Okay. Pretty much a drone is it's usually a usually there's no pilot or anybody's driving it. It's usually a kind of a flying small or in our case big plane that used for surveillance. So it's like kind of looking at certain areas, recording certain areas, just kind of remaining in flight, just recording anything that it can. It's its main purpose for surveillance.
Does anybody else have any questions? If you don't have any questions, I'll keep asking. The question that I have is the engineering design process. We kind of simplify it to ask, imagine, plan, create, improve. Would you use the engineering design process with your work?
Ask, imagine. What's the steps again?
I mean, you would have a more complicated process, right, for when you're designing stuff. Huh?
Yeah.
But what can you talk to us about? Talk to us about the engineering design process and what that is, maybe.
Okay, so when it comes to Boeing, we're always looking for ways to improve our methods, and especially with the way that technology kind of improves itself over time, we have to be able to update our process as well. So it's kind of like similar to what you said. We gotta ask the questions: what can be improved? What can we do to reduce the amount of time that we're spending on a certain point or a certain process? And how can we implement this in the most effective way without cutting into budget, without cutting into time? So that's kind of the biggest thing. It's kind of the biggest thing we think about going into it is just, can we save time? Do we save money? And is it still a top quality product when it's done?
I had a couple more. What advice would you have for kids in terms of careers in STEM?
Well, for one, it's not as hard as people say it is. It is challenging. I'm not trying to synonyms here. It is challenging because all things are challenging. Everything is a challenge. It's as good as it's as good as the amount of effort you put into it. It's going to take more effort. There will be long nights. If I recall from my college years, there will be long nights. A lot of open-ended tests, but it definitely pays off in the end.
A couple more questions from our chat. What got you interested in engineering?
Funny story. In high school, in my high school back in Texas, we didn't have any like specific engineering courses. The only thing I had close to a simulator course or a program course was keyboard or a computer, learning how to use a keyboard and learning how to use a computer. I forgot what they called it. And I'm not old, I'm just 30, so don't get it twisted. But it's yeah, that's all I had. And then one day I went to a college advisor and they were just like, hey, so what do you like to do? I'm just like, well, I like to tear stuff apart and I like video games. Kind of put that in a computer, try to see one of those aptitude tests pops out, computer engineering. I was like, all right, let's go for that. And then that's what I ended up going to school for.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions in the chat. I appreciate your questions. What problems is Boeing trying to solve right now?
Well, I think the most well-known one that's been going through the news lately is the whole commercial flight with the plane crashes. So I think it was the 747, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so it's always been continuous efforts on that. As far as like now, it's just trying to, just as many other engineering companies as just companies and even everybody in general is just dealing with how to maintain business during COVID, during this pandemic. A lot of in certain areas we had to do a halt in production because of COVID. In some other places we had to kind of adjust, doing a reduction in the amount of services we can do. So it's pretty much kind of solving how do we pretty much maintain a good standing while we're maintaining this physical distancing and dealing with this COVID.
And how long was college? How long do you have to go to college to be an engineer?
A typical bachelor's degree is 4 years for engineering. Yeah, if you go for more than that, I mean, it would be normally, if you go for a master's, that's normally 2 years. But that's not to say if you take an extra year, sometimes in some cases, some courses are not available every semester. Sometimes you have to skip, or you have to wait a semester in order to take a certain class when it comes to upper level engineering electives, depending on your school. And that can probably prolong your degree by maybe a year or so. But typically it's around like 4 or 5 years for your bachelor's.
Remember, everybody, if you have a question, put it in chat. That question was from Miracle. Now we have one from Angel. Oh, what level of education? That's the same question. So you need a bachelor's and then you can get a master's. Why would you go on to get your master's? Why would that be helpful for you?
Well, I guess the simplest answer is that you get more money. So yeah, if you continue your education in engineering, you would get more money. Especially depending on the job you have. What's a common thing is that when you're working in an engineering job, some of the companies are willing to help pay for continuing education. So instead of you going out of pocket, taking out a lot of loans to get the master's, your school will help you. Your job will help you pay for school. Sorry for that. So
Wisdom has a question.
What's that?
Oh, sorry. You can finish your answer. I thought you were done.
No, I was just saying that I have quite a bit of friends who have continued going on getting their masters with the help from their jobs. And sometimes it's to help them continue on going up the rankings of their position, or if they wanted to kind of make a change in the engineering shift or in their engineering job, then they can go another route.
All right. So Wisdom has a question. When do you get tired of your job ever? When do you get tired of your job?
Do I get tired of my job? I have sometimes, Sometimes it can get tiring when you work many hours. Sometimes you got to take a break. It's what vacation, PTO is for.
Yeah.
But it's always, anytime a new project comes along, I'm always happy to get back on there and get back into the swing of things. We do have our lull moments at times where nothing's really going on.
CJ's asking what 1 + 1 is.
Whoa, I haven't been asked that question in years. Let me think on that.
Yeah, we can come back to that
2?
one maybe. What is it?
Maybe. Is it 2?
Maybe, I don't know. The next question I would ask you is if like being black has any influence on your job or like has affected your career. That's a hard question.
It is a hard question. um, I guess as in general, as far as my experience, I think I've been pretty fortunate as far as like my team and the teams that I work with. That as far as me being black, it doesn't carry any like bias or anything to it. They see me as a teammate. I think if anything, the things I get harped on is just being young, because in the engineering fields, especially in Boeing, is a big age gap. So a lot of old people, a lot of young people, and as far as my color wise, I mean, we do have what we have groups that are catered to the black employees of Boeing. One being we have a chapter of the NSBE, which is the National Society of Black Engineers, and they help out. They kind of gather us together to talk about different events that's going on and different ways that we can combat any kind of workplace environments that is detrimental or kind of compromising to who we are as black professionals. But it's mostly encouraging things that keeps us proud to be who we are in this field.
And Malia wants to know, do you have to work on the weekends?
Sometimes. Typically, it's 9 to 5, 5 days a week. But when certain projects needs to be done, or some program is really needing certain things done by a certain date, then we'll take the time, the overtime over the weekends to do so. Typically, it's usually Monday through Friday.
When you say overtime, you're probably salaried, so you don't get paid for overtime?
Oh, no, I get paid overtime.
So tell us about that. So if you have to work on the weekends, what happens? Because when I work on the weekends, I don't get paid.
Wow. So, with us, we typically do kind of a clock in, clock out system. So whatever hours we accumulate working, it's accounted for. We have timesheets. So anything we put, whether it's regular hours or overtime, it goes on that timesheet. Then after the pay period, they add all that up and apply and pay us according to time.
So if you
and mind you, like the overtime approved through program, like it's not guaranteed every time. So sometimes we have to try to fit all that work in those regular hours. But with us, overtime is typically paid for through the program.
So if you were I had a question about overtime. Okay, but let's say you work 1 hour on the weekend. How much money would you get for 1 hour on the weekend?
For 1 hour, if I'm not mistaken, is it time and a half?
Right.
Yeah.
So would you know how much 1 hour would be?
Man, do not know off the top of my head, but it's somewhere probably in the 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s range.
Maybe 40s, right? All
Can't
right.
guess right off the top.
Yeah, that's all right. How long are your projects? Gary wants to know how long your projects are.
How long are my projects? They range. They range depending on what's needed. It can go from, typically we run this special project management where we try to do things within 2-week increments. But some of these projects can last from a month to almost half a year or so, depending on what's needed. Because like we could start from literally we start from scratch. Like sometimes when I say building up these computers, we would get these computers, and there's like maybe at the least there's maybe 8 computers. At most there's probably 20 computers. We have to put operating systems on every one and set up every PC one by one, and then make sure that they work. So that can take from 1 week to multiple weeks, depending on how many systems and what their requirements are. We have to match the program requirements.
Okay, and if you had to tell me about what coding is, because I don't know if we know what coding is.
So with coding, as far as on our standpoint, it's kind of a back-end thing. It's different languages that we use on our computers that set up or give different commands for the computer to do certain things, whether it's telling it to fly a certain area or telling it to boot up a certain operating system. It all involves coding. So this is a bunch of text characters depending on what coding language that you use. And for us, it varies because we have different scripts. So it's like PowerShell, Python. I'm just naming a bunch of them, but yeah, there's multiple coding languages that we use to help us make sure that these simulators run correctly.
Okay, and we've got 5 minutes left before they have to go to their next class, and you're gonna have a busy day. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have anything you would want to add, or you would want the kids to know, or any advice that you'd have for them, or anything like that?
Well, just kind of just know that, I mean, just Black people in STEM, like, we're out here. You know, we've been through the journey, you know, going through school, through college, through work, just to be a representation for y'all. And just know that whatever you like to do, continue doing it. Don't ever think that you're not smart enough for something. It's all behind practice, being consistent. You're gonna slip and fall sometimes, but you're never too dumb to do anything. You just gotta keep practicing. So yeah, I'm rooting for all y'all. You know, I was in y'all's shoes once. You know, it's definitely a journey. So embrace the journey and just do the best you can do, because that's all you can do.
All right. Well, maybe we'll let them go to class. Thank you so much for your time again. This is wonderful, like absolutely great.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. Yeah, I'm glad I got all the questions. I hope I answered the 1+1 right, CJ. Just let me know if I'm wrong or anything. But everybody else, I appreciate all y'all's questions. I appreciate you, Martin, for setting this up.
Yeah. All right. And if they have more questions for you later, maybe I'll pass them along, but we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds good.
Have a great day.
All right. You too.